This is Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. Future Sense Now is brought to you by the Futures Forum. Stay tuned for a journey to the futures of women with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
Well, greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online e-zine of the Futures Forum. I'm Claire Nelson and your travel guide on today's exploration of the future. We are celebrating March 2017 and we're celebrating Women's History Month with an exploration into the future history of women. We're looking at 2030 and beyond because of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, of which Goal 5, SDG 5, says achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And so it targets the most basic things from eliminating poverty and violence all the way through to adopting sound policies and legislation for promotion of gender equality and empowerment of all women. Now that's a big mouthful and it could be unrealistic, but I'm talking to women who are futurists around the world to see what they think of how this might emerge, what's happening to make this real and possible or not. And today's guest, I have PURUESH CHAUDHARY, and I'm sure I've just mangled her name, but she will correct me. PURUESH CHAUDHARY. It's a very pretty name. It sounds like a musical symbol. PURUESH CHAUDHARY. She is a futures researcher and strategic narrative professional who is based in Islamabad, Pakistan. And she is founder and president of Agahi, which is an NGO that promotes interactive learning, collaborative thinking, and knowledge sharing. She also founded the Foresight Lab, which engages legislators, strategists, and academics and the community to really look at policy making and implementation in a very different way. And she is considered a champion of the future of journalism, and there are many other things she does to make Pakistan be very viable in terms of what it's doing. In fact, Pakistan is one of the few countries which has a 2030 vision statement that actually predates the SDGs, so I'm really excited to talk to her about that. And I must also add, she chaired the Pakistani node of the Millennjum project. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome PURUESH CHAUDHARY. So how are you? Greetings. How are you?
I'm very good, Claire. Thank you for having me on the program.
Now, I am excited to talk to you because I really made a deliberate attempt to try and reach women from different parts of the world. One of the things we want to do at the Futures Forum is ensure that we lift up and amplify the voices of other people other than white males in terms of what the future might look like. And so I'm happy to have somebody from the Asian continent participating. So we were talking about the SDGs, and I said that Pakistan is one of the few countries that have a 2030 vision statement that predates the UN SDGs. So were you involved with that? Tell me more about that. Were you involved in any way in some of the dialogue leading up to that?
Well, to tell you honestly, no, I wasn't. And the thing with, I think one of my findings in terms of my futures work in Pakistan has been of the sort that a lot of our vision documents are not really concretely based on systematically understanding the state of the country as it is currently, and in terms of where it is potentially heading and how many direction is it potentially heading. So I think although vision documents are important, but if it's in contradiction to what the challenges and the opportunities that sort of lie ahead of the policymakers' decision-making process, then I find it quite convenient as a glorified document in terms of having it around. It is something that makes us look pretty, I guess, but
you sure it is.
well, I mean, so it's a good thing, and but is it a relevant thing to our local context? No, it's not. So here is where there is stark contradiction in terms of how we do visioning and how we do futures work, because futures work is not really institutionalized in this country. So there
Right.
is there it's a and the way we sort of so there is a lot of jargon, I guess. There is a lot of people say a lot of things, but they don't understand that there goes it is much deeper than that, and there has to be a very systematic approach to how the vision is converted into reality. Now,
Yes.
when I say this, I'm not negating the fact that in the past Pakistan has not done this exercise. Pakistan has done several of these exercises, but vision exercise alone is very irrelevant when you do not have a robust strategic visioning structure or systems in place.
Let me ask you a question. Were women involved in the process of planning, designing the process, or in terms of how they were reached out to as stakeholders?
Yeah. Women in this country, I think one of the fascinating things is that we see a lot of women in workplaces in the country. We were considered as best managers and multitaskers. So, it's very convenient for us to be labeled as such. But when it comes to decision making, I think that is somewhere we've seen that happen over the years. It has been a gradual progress in our assemblies, in our parliament. So that's a very positive thing which is happening in Pakistan. But then we sort of label it, with various sort of thing, but not understand the technical outcome of a decision that was taken during President Musharraf's time. It was to actually increase the number of seats, women seats in seats for women in the parliament. So that gave, I guess, that created the space for having much more women participation. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it has to be an ongoing process. Just having women in the parliament is simply not enough. You have to work across all institution, I think, and this is where regulators can play a very effective role, which I
So,
don't sort of see them doing. But like, how many women do we have on boards of different multinational companies or large scale enterprises in Pakistan? Or how many women are they CEOs? So these questions still remain unanswered.
let me
Uh,
ask you a question. Um, in terms of a futures approach to looking at how we construct the future, one of the things I've always found very fascinating, certainly as somebody who's working in international development, is identity as a culture, cultural identity, and how that really your worldview, your mythology about the world really shapes what's possible. So, given that Pakistan is a predominantly Islamic country, how are you juxtaposing a mythology that says women belong in this place with a modern idea, but this is not quite so? How does somebody like yourself and people who work in your spaces kind of have to, I wouldn't say, let's say, shape it and mold it so it can really emerge into a 21st century version of what was written way back when?
I, let me do you okay, let me get this question straight. Do you sort of mean by what are the Islamic futures through a women's lens, or perhaps what is whether or not Islam actually is a barrier to for women to be in such roles? So
I
which part
think
is it
it's
the first
both. I
one?
think both would be relevant because um, you might, as you said, we have a law that now says, Parliament must have a certain number of women, but the whole cultural getting to agree to that is another whole level of change, mindset change. And you rightly say, 15 women can't do that, 50 women can't do that. So, but since so much of your your society is driven by a religious framework, I guess I'm asking, is there a way for women's voices who can read and write to sort of reinterpret the meaning of religious belief in a way that is still, let's say, in the context of the religion itself, but still allows a new interpretation?
I think you don't. I think Islam in itself is a very it's a belief system that has already taken care of many of these factors that you speak of. So when you say like women as part of, we have a lot of women in different sectors who, so there is a very dear friend of mine who works on um, Islamic laws and family systems and all that, and I think she's doing a wonderful job as in herself. There are women scholars who are perhaps writing and who are perhaps not more so preaching, but sort of helping people understand what Islam is. So having such women in the society, I think that is something which is already there, and this is not something which is I think which is new in a Muslim community, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps in West, or perhaps in other countries where Muslims are a minority, are a migrant community, perhaps that could be more of a challenge there. But in terms of having those, that I wouldn't say, we've not reached
It's
to
one
a point
o'clock.
where we identify them as people who are perhaps in the leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? But we do have those slight indicators. We do have those slight instances. So on the Council of Islamic Ideology, there is a
Yes.
council. Uh, uh, we have women representation there.
So
So I
through
don't.
women's
I don't.
voices, then, so the
Yeah,
second part of your response to my question, which was a good question, which you rephrased my question as, was about Islamic futures through women's eyes. Does
yeah.
Islamic futures through women's eyes would allow for more women leadership, let's say in corporate Pakistan? Would that be possible?
Okay, so it's a very good question, and I think that's a very insight.
Or
Uh,
is it
and, and
overwarranted?
so I have not come across, and frankly speaking, I have not come across any research. You see, what I sort of what I've felt increasingly as a researcher is that a lot of the thinking frameworks.
Uh-huh.
I'm just going to I'm going to generalize this to the core. Um, a lot of the thinking frameworks have been predominantly developed by men.
That's true. The
So
ones
if
we
a lot of
study, the ones we study at school, all of us.
Yes, I mean,
Right.
and women have just been plugging in the information and creating the context that fits those frameworks. And I think we need more women who are actually creating those thinking templates. So if we have women come to such a level, only then would we see, as a result of which would we see more women in leadership positions. Just
Yeah.
right, even today, if you look at it is perhaps men finally getting to sort of say like, oh, this is because this exists in our societies, and it is not because of us. We believe that you need equality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like, it's almost like a hand me down kind of a thing. It's not something which is like, well, we're both equal. Okay, I mean, that's not the inherent attitude in the
Well,
in the in the
well,
in the
no, because
system stuff.
from, I mean, most of the, let's say, standard texts of religion, of the Abrahamic faiths are that, woman was created from a man's rib. Therefore, we are, subject to, that's why it's man and woman in English anyway, and in Latin. So it's out of. So that alone is the whole languishing of how language and, as you rightly say, our politics in countries that are former colonies of the United Kingdom, for example, we all have the same sort of a um, legalistic and academic thinking styles, which were kind of taught to us in a particular way. So what you said was actually quite real, the whole framework of how we think about gender. So as you think about that, what I want to say is, do we even want, would you then say, first of all, what does leadership then look like in 2030 if we're talking about a society which is more global, which is with more data sets than ever, which is still possibly very young in the developing countries and very old in developed countries? What is leadership going to look like? I mean, I'd love to find out, for example, when women converge in Washington in January, a lot of women around the world was like, "Yeah, it's women's time now," and Hillary Clinton said, and for people who are not thinking about this all the time, the future is female, and all of a sudden now it's the new meme in Washington, D.C. But many of us have been saying this for a long time in terms of how people are thinking about things, how leadership styles are changing. So as you think about it in your work as a futurist, and the fact that you're actually working in so many levels of community in Pakistan, you're working at a local level, you're working with national government, you're working with local government, local community people. You really have like a broad breadth. Do you think, from the perspective of women in Pakistan, they see a future in which they are leaders in the Western context, or is there like a Pakistani version of what that might look like?
Okay. So because we talk about 2030, it makes it much more easier for me to sort of put the future is female context in place.
Yes.
So the universities that I worked with now, the girls do see themselves as part of the future leadership.
Yes.
But here's a caveat to all of this. The process through which this needs to happen yet needs to be established.
Yes.
Do you understand? So then the question arises for someone who's working here, then the question arises is, when I go back to those thinking templates and when I go back to all these, I mean, who is working on the architecture for all of this? Is it a woman? Is it a man? Should we have lateral thinking in the process? I mean, for me, that becomes a much more fundamental question, rather than seeing that, okay, you have this vision, you have this metaphor, which is future is female, but what does that actually mean? And if this be the case, how would we get there? Now,
So
when
you
we
have
say,
a node, you actually have a system where, because you have a node of the Millennium Society, you have a chapter, an organization, you actually have a space then where these
yeah,
young women could actually really now maybe play some futures games or futures theater to kind of act out, because they have to now move towards constructing the future if they actually have that vision, isn't it?
absolutely. And here's the thing about Millennium Project, which I find absolutely fascinating. It a future. What I found about futures is that it is so not male dominated, right?
Yes, it is.
And that is, I believe that is something which can potentially permutate the whole process in such a way that it is just a ripple effect and it grows. So it needs to start somewhere. But Millennium Project actually, I mean, it helped me get that insight. It's like, it's not about men versus women, or men giving women, or women just sort of subscribing to whatever mental frameworks they are.
Yes.
It is actually how you combine the two thinking
Yes.
and then evolve into perhaps a better version of what you
Exactly.
may have. Yeah. So the whole idea is, do we want to become better versions of ourselves in the future, or should we just base our entire decisions? I mean, inherently, most of our decision making is past oriented to begin with.
Yes.
It is really future oriented. So I think this platforms like Millennium Project and or other such networks play a very foundational role in creating that ripple effect.
Yeah, I like what you said about the idea of is it just male, female, male leadership or women's leadership, or is it that we need a new combined style of leadership? Because that is where the issue about um, looking at the future and the futures of women from a different paradigm. The future of the world is not just the future of women or men. So if I was to say to you, because one of the things that have always interested me is that we talk about women as a specific goal, but there needs to be in the context of the UN SDG, which is something I think about all the time. I mean, I've been thinking about this from like 2000 when we had the MDGs, because I work in development. It's like you have agriculture challenges, you have water challenges, you have food challenges, you have how we use space challenges.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
some people see women as separate from all of those things. Then there's the whole question of the rule books, which comes back to these frameworks. I am concerned about the shaping and the sharing of the rule books and the decision making process itself. Because if we're moving into a global future where there's more and more data sets, then the question of who decides what is done with that data is also itself a leadership role that has to be played by somebody. So I don't know at this point in the Pakistani vision statement if that includes issues around food security or technology
It
diversity.
does. It does.
But if you
It
had to
talks
pick
about,
one,
yeah, it talks about all of that. I mean, this is something which is like, which is the golden rule of doing any vision in this country. It's like you talk about all those things, but when it comes to like, okay, so you've been here for 5 years, what is the progress that you've made?
yes,
And then when we look back, it's the so but not to say there have lot of things. So access to clean drinking water has improved women's health. So the data in some way indicates certain improvement in certain aspect, not entirely all. But one of the things that I sort of also feel that um rule making is I making has always been is very narrowly focused on how a particular community would want to see the rest of the world, right?
yes,
And that I think, in terms of that, I think has backfired. I mean, people have local context to everything. When you talk about women, when you talk about culture, culture is not, you can have you can have certain set of values aligned with other people, which is mostly human connection driven.
yes,
But when you talk about culture, when you talk about arts, and when you talk about all these things, and when you associate the gender imperative to it, then you sort of notice that, you know so if the rule making is done by one community, and it is not enforced, rather it is perhaps put as a framework on the rest who
yes,
have not been part of the process,
yes,
uh, then there is very less chance for them to take it very seriously, by the way. Because in the power corridors, it has to, there are certain political obsessions,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that happens to be much more important than people. And it is not just for Pakistan. I think it is something that that the entire world has a problem with. So I don't understand. There has to be a political goal.
Right.
Like,
Well, you have lived all over the place and studied all over the place, so you certainly have a good perspective of different, ways of entering the space. As you think about then the future of women, and this issue of all the challenges that are global, if you had to pick one global challenge as your focal point, which would you pick? Would you pick agriculture? Would you pick climate change, environment, water, energy, healthcare, which outside of the women's agenda, what would you say is your thing that would probably keep you up at night, and how would you address it from a woman's point of view?
okay, that's loaded question actually. Yeah. So, I have to sort of look at the SDG agenda and sort of see like if I did want to pick up one, um, I think one of the one of I think one of it's they are the partnerships. I think partnerships are very important. You know,
Yes,
we need to leverage from what is already there, which is, technology is already there.
yes,
Connectivity at a cyberspace level is already there. Now,
yes,
China is making progress in terms of the physicality of that connectivity,
yes,
and that is again an important um, element
yes,
to achieving many goals within sustainability framework.
yes,
But I feel through a women's lens in terms of decision making, it is very important for them to focus on partnerships, because I believe the more collaborative become, the higher the impact is.
yes,
So
yes,
so
yes,
so so the world, the sustainable development goals in its entirety, because there's so many of them, and we as a country actually fail to achieve those previous goals. So I mean, for us to actually say like, okay, we're going to do this by 2030. So, but in its entirety, I think partnerships is the most key aspect for women working in futures, working in development, to look at it as an opportunity for higher gains,
yes, yes,
right?
yes,
So it is not easy. It is narrowly focused. I'm not talking about there's going to be world peace, there's going to be prosperity, everyone's going to be rich, because that will
no,
never be the case,
yes, yes,
right?
no, I
So
don't
what
think so.
will actually be the case is that women in futures can actually help one another, help their communities. And I think the way we're moving, it is the way the world is sort of shifting. It is more local context and physical connectivity.
Yes.
And at that, and the convergence of the two, there has to be a collaborative framework in place.
Let me make sure I understand you. When you say physical connectivity, what do you mean?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. So so there is the One Belt, One Road initiative, right?
Yes, yes,
From China east to the west,
yes,
right? And in Pakistan, there is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor,
yes,
right? And my entire discussion on the corridor has been like, there has to be more women sitting around the decision making along what is China Pakistan Economic Corridor. What would China Economic Pakistan Corridor mean for the local communities? Would
definitely.
mean for the businessmen? Would mean for the education system? So I think there
Yes,
has to
okay.
be more women leadership seen there. So this is something
Yes,
that I've been focusing on, and
yes,
I think much more research needs to be done to build that conscious
yes,
of the government,
yes,
build the conscious of other relevant stakeholders also. So that's important, I guess. That is one of these are one of the things, because if you're half of the world's population, and then in Pakistan you're again half of the national population. Um, and we see many girls in universities, many girls in colleges. You see significant
Yes.
uh, women entering into the education system,
Yes.
what making it into the employment industry, the services industry, the employment, the labor force, and you see all those. So there has to be. We have parliamentary committees, we have all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
again, having them to substantiate all of this requires extensive research that
Yes.
needs.
Yeah. So in one word, you would say your thing is partnerships, and that's women to women partnerships and women to men partnerships, men to women partnerships, local to local partnerships, local to national
Yeah,
partnerships. So there's always like a mesh of activity and relationships where women have a space in these relationships of decision
yeah,
making.
yes,
So you're
absolutely,
optimistic. Are you
absolutely,
optimistic that this is the trend of the future, not just of Pakistan, but let's say of the Asian subcontinent?
absolutely.
Okay, well, that's great. A good place
Yeah.
to end our conversation. Um, we have completed a very fascinating conversation with Puresh Chaudhary, and you did not correct me if I was pronouncing your name wrong. So I,
It's very you, Chaudhary, but which is fine. I mean, I'm good with.
Who is in Pakistan, and she is a futurist there. And as I said earlier, she is a distinguished fellow also of the Institute of Strategic Studies in Islamabad and a co-founder of the Media Development Trust. So thank you so much. Do you have any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
No, I think we have to continue thinking about of what kind of a world would we leave for our future generation, you know.
And that's
So
and that's part of the work of being a woman futurist, right?
yeah, I guess so.
Well, folks, I just want to thank you for listening to another edition of Future Sense Now, or Online Easy on the Futures Forum, where we're trying to bring you more diverse voices of those who are indeed shaping our shared future. Today's guest was Puresh Chaudhary from Pakistan, and I invite you to remember that the future is embedded in the landscape of all that is now present, and to face our shared future with faith. Thank you so much for listening.
You have been listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson, brought to you by the Futures Forum. For more, please visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Thank you for listening. Spread the word. Share the future.